Elagabalus became Emperor of Rome at age 14. How good a job do you really think he did? Elagabalus, not to be confused with Cobra Law's leader Globulus, also known as Marcus Aurelius Antoninus Augustus, was born in 204. His father was a senator, his grandmother was the sister-in-law to Emperor Septimus Severus, and his mother was the cousin of Emperor Caracalla. Septimus and Caracalla were father and son, and yes, they were both emperor concurrently, starting in 198, and in 209 they brought in Caracalla's younger brother Geta. So yeah, from 209 to 211, Rome technically had 3 co-emperors. Moving on, Elagabalus was Syrian and the high priest at the temple of Elagabal, a Syrian Roman sun god, also known as Elagabalus, hence where the emperor got his name. Now, people didn't start calling him Elagabalus until after his death, but that's what I'm calling him here, mostly because I'm not saying Marcus Aurelius Antoninus Augustus any more than I have to. Trust me, it's hard enough, you try saying Elagabalus this many times. Also, keep in mind that he's Syrian, because that's going to be on the test later. Elagabalus means god of the mountain, by the way, even though he was a sun god, pretty much the Roman ripoff of the Greek Helios. And he was sometimes called Heliogabalus. Yeah, just roll with it. So by 217, Rome had gone from 3 co-emperors to 0. Septimus died in 211, leaving his sons in charge, but not long after, Caracalla had his brother murdered and became sole emperor. And of course, he wiped out all of Geta's supporters, thousands of people were killed. This was just how things were done. And also, of course, one day Caracalla stopped to pee and a disgruntled soldier stabbed him to death, that soldier being killed shortly after. He had been put up to the murder by Macrinus, who became emperor a few days later when the army backed him and there was really nothing much that the Senate could do to stop it. To be fair, Caracalla was planning to have Macrinus killed, so it was kind of self-defense. Look, this was just how things were done back then. After he took power, he found the empire in rather dire financial straits. Mostly due to high pay for soldiers, he ended up cutting the starting pay for new troops, which pissed off the veterans and the army started to turn against him. He also sent away Caracalla's mother, fearing that she would try to overthrow him, as well as her family. Now, her sister, Julia Misa, began to plot a rebellion so that her grandson, Elagabalus, could become emperor. She began to claim to some that he was the illegitimate child of Caracalla, and after some monetary consideration, okay, let's be honest, she made it rain on them boys, the 3rd Legion swore allegiance to the 14-year-old. Macrinus learned of this and sent a force to quell the rebellion. However, the soldiers turned on their officers and joined the rebels, sending the commanding officer's head back to the emperor. In the Battle of Antioch that followed, Macrinus was captured and executed. Oh, and he also made his 10-year-old son co-emperor with him, so his son was also captured and executed. Their heads were presented to Elagabalus as trophies. Again, this is the way. So 14-year-old Elagabalus became emperor. Now, he had a few strikes against him as far as the citizens were concerned. Firstly, he wasn't Roman, he was Syrian, so that didn't go over well. Number 2, he was rather zealous, almost zestful in his beliefs, and raised the god Elagab to the top of the pantheon. If that sounds a lot like what Akhenaten did, you're not wrong. He even had a meteor from the front of his old temple moved to Rome, and the whole meteor being important to religion thing is bigger than you'd think. That square that the Muslim pilgrims march around in Mecca, yeah, it has a meteor embedded into it. Number 3, he was rather effeminate, and many today believe that he may have been trans. I don't know, and I'm not going to go down that road. He did have male lovers. In fact, he loved to be referred to as his chariot driver's wife, and was fond of wearing makeup and wigs. Strike 4, yeah, that actually exists, his marriage choices. He married Julia Paula, but divorced her not long after when he fell in love with Aquila Severa, who just so happened to be a Vestal Virgin. Now, Vestal Virgins didn't have sex, hence their name, therefore they didn't marry, but when the emperor said so, they got married. By the way, the punishment for a Vestal Virgin having sex is to be buried alive. Not long after, we're talking less than a year, he came across Aeneas Faustina, who was married to a senator with 2 small children. But when the emperor orders for him to be brought up on trumped-up charges and executed, you go along with it. So after her husband's death and being ordered not to mourn him, she married the emperor, who shortly after left her to go back to his previous wife. You know, hey, King David did the same kind of thing. So, originally I wasn't going to mention some accusations that were leveled against Elagabalus. One, because we're pretty sure they were just smear campaigns against the emperor, and two, because what the hell do I show you people while I talk about it? And I decided on pretty sunsets, so here we go. In addition to wearing makeup and wigs, plus removing all his body hair and demanding to be referred to as lady rather than lord, he supposedly, and I cannot stress supposedly enough here, enjoyed visiting taverns and brothels where he would prostitute himself. He supposedly also did this in the palace in addition to forcing people to watch him dance around naked. It was also reported that he wished to have his genitals removed and replaced with the female version. Again, none of this is proven in any way and is only included because it's much of what he's remembered for, so we're moving on. With the public and the army turning against him, his grandmother began to plan another rebellion, this time to a different grandson. And unsurprisingly, this worked. Elagabalus was assassinated by the Praetorian Guard, as was his mother, and their heads were used as trophies. Basically, imagine the Secret Service got tired of the president, so they killed him, cut his head off as a trophy, drug his body through the streets of Washington, D.C. before dumping it into a river. Hey, I wonder if there was a guy living down there. And proclaiming someone else as the new president. He was also then erased from records, a process known as damnatio memoria. Again, say it with me now, this is the way. So Elagabalus was emperor for 4 years before he managed to piss off the entire empire enough that they celebrated his death and destroyed his statues. But to be fair, his replacement made it 12 years before he too was assassinated by his own men. You know what's coming, say it with me now, this is the way.